I know we've covered a lot of material in the course, and because it's not been in a textbook, it may not be as clear to you in all cases exactly what I want you to recall for the exam. So I'm going to go through and be fairly explicit of the major learning points in the course to date. Everything that is on the exam, I guarantee you I will touch on in this review. However, I will also touch on other things that are important that may not be in the exam. The exam will be 25 multiple choice, and then some short answers, and then also a complete the map sort of affair. It will be, I'll make a separate video where I review what you need to remember from the geological discussions. Also, the vocabulary quizzes are fair game for the exam, but I'll tip my hand pretty strongly and tell you this. If it's a vocabulary word you haven't heard us use in the class multiple times, it's not the one on the exams. The ones on the exam are very, very central definitions that you need to understand to have any credibility in the oil and gas industry. So let's dive in. Off of this chart, we talked about what is the difference between heavy and sour, light and heavy, and sweet and sour, and the relative advantages and disadvantages of each of those. Also, we talk about how big is a barrel of oil. I had you watch a video clip and read a chapter out of the prize that talks about how oil came to be. And so there is a question on the exam where you're going to be required to put together, if you will, the events that happened shortly before and just after the discovery of the well and what the oil industry looked like. I'm not going to test you on years or something like that, but you're going to have a pretty good grasp of what happened so that you can do some application. Nothing off this particular chart, nothing here. For Standard Oil, again, I had you watch a section from the prize that talked about Standard Oil. So I want you to be familiar with what Rockefeller did and what his impact in the industry was. I led you through a series of the oil discoveries in Texas. You don't need to know the names and the years. I'll pause on the ones where I want you to know. I do want you to know 1901 and Spindletop. Also, there was a section in the Fundamentals of Petroleum book that talked about some of the advances at Spindletop, and I want you to be up on that for the exam. It's important that you know 1918 and also 1911 just because of this area. It's not on the exam, but you should still know that. The next one I want you to be up on is the black giant. There's a question or two on the impact of the black giant, so be very familiar with that. And again, I had you watch a little bit on YouTube about that. The Seven Sisters, this is the period of the first, I will say, 3/4 or 2/3 of the 20th century. So know who the Seven Sisters were and also what they were responsible for and what their role was in the world. You do not need to know the years in which oil was discovered around the world. There are a question or two on OPEC, so know the basics of OPEC. Also know why OPEC was created. Understand just how much of the world oil that OPEC controls, and what is the status of OPEC today and what sort of influence does it have. As far as the history through price, there is a question on this. You don't need to have memorized what happened in or what year in which these arrows occur, but you do need to know what happened with those years and why it happened. So, for example, I won't say what year did Iraq invade Kuwait. I would give you the year 1990 to 1991, and then you would have to know, oh, okay, that was Iraq invading Kuwait, and concerns over the supply of oil caused oil prices to rise. That's what you need to know, and you need to know that for all of the big drops and rises in oil price. Off of this chart, it's important to understand that oil is now a globally traded commodity on things like the NYMEX in the futures market, which is why part of what it gains by being in the NYMEX, but also knowing the difference between the spot and the futures price and how that goes together. Do not worry about memorizing the numbers on this chart, but I would like you to remember that these are the countries that have the relatively larger oil reserves. Also note that the two countries, or two of the three countries with the largest oil reserves, have their reserves more in oil sands than in what we would think of as traditional drilling sorts of operations. And what are the pros and the cons of the oil sands? You're responsible for knowing that as well. We talked about that. Also, again, we talked about Brent, WTI, some of the other oils, and why not all oil is equal. So be familiar with that. Nothing on the ownership of minerals. I want you to be aware of why the increase in the United States. And remember, fracking itself is not new. Fracking has been around since the 1950s, I believe. What changed in fracking was the advancement of slickwater fracking. But it wasn't just fracking alone. There was another key invention that combined with an improvement in fracking, and that was the horizontal drilling and the ability to very carefully control the location of the bit. That was a role in the increase. And all those things that we are just illustrations of that. Then we talked about how mid and downstream, so pipelines and refineries. And I showed you this chart about how different WTI, the price for WTI and Brent were, even though in terms of quality, they're relatively identical oils. So, and then I told you that it dramatically changed. I expect you to know why it changed, not just to give me a short answer, but also explain why that change was so significant as pertains to the mid and the downstream business. Also, remember, it was here that I introduced to you Cushing, Oklahoma, and how it's the nexus of several petroleum pipelines, and how this is typically the location at which futures on the NYMEX market are traded. As far as peak oil is, I wanted you to read that article, but there's nothing on the test about it. However, the article I gave you on Saudi Arabia does have a test question about peak demand, because that's what people are worried about now. As far as petroleum uses go, the main thing I want you do not have to have all these percentages memorized, but what I would like you to remember is that gasoline in the United States accounts for just under half of the use of a barrel of oil, and that is, if you will, the high value, the commodity that or the output product that people are most looking for from a barrel of oil. The other transportation fuels, diesel fuel and jet fuel, which are middle distillates, providing a lot more. So you could say almost as much as 70% in the United States of a barrel of oil goes into transportation. It's not true around the world. It's more like 50%. So I want you to be familiar with these things and how not just the statistics, but how that impacts what oils are more desirable and goes into the pricing of the various types of crude. Another chart that reinforces that. I want you to be familiar that over the past several years, the use of natural gas has really spiked in the electrical power sector. And that's because, to be perfectly honest, the decrease in natural gas prices that came about and the relative confidence that we have in the supply caused, particularly in this era, people to really favor natural gas over coal because it becomes more economic. Also, it has the side benefit that natural gas is much cleaner than coal from a carbon footprint. And so those are long-term trends that I think are unlikely to be changed. Nothing here on the seasonality in usage of natural gas. We talked about an electrical generation and how this chart ends in 2014 because I don't have the most updated information. But now in 2016, natural gas actually surpassed the usage of coal. And even though the percentages are such that they may swap leads a few times in the next few years, there are lots of reasons to believe this is a long-term trend and that coal will continue to decline. Talked about here that the Marcellus Shale is the leading producer of shale gas in the United States. Talked about how the natural gas prices are made at Henry Hub, which again is a nexus of pipelines in the middle of nowhere in southern Louisiana. And this tends to be, just as the Cushing oil is the key price for the NYMEX, Henry Hub price. Gas pricing tends to be more regional due to lack of pipeline transportation to move it as easily. It also, because it can be refined and used on the spot, it gives it a little bit of a different flavor. And I shouldn't say refined, it can be cleaned and processed and go into the commercial markets much more readily. So there are the conclusions. I don't expect you to know the names of the major world oil companies. I do expect you to know that around the world of the proven reserves, the national oil companies control about 90% of the proven reserves, because these national oil companies are just that. They're really arms of the government. Because the government owns the reserves, that's who has the majority of the reserves. I expect you to know what makes an IOC, and also notice the consolidation in the IOC industry. But in the United States, it's the independents that are doing the majority of the onshore drilling. And when I say the majority, I mean 95% of the onshore drilling. I don't expect you to remember the names of the independents. I do expect you to remember their very dominant position in the U.S. Onshore market. Nothing about the service companies, nor about the midstream or downstream companies. But again, there is a question about impact of midstream and downstream, so you're going to not just want to misunderstand all that. And finally, I went back to here. I had a not very good map with the plays on it, and I emailed you a map on the plays. And there is a map on the exam where you're going to have to locate the plays. Now, I'm not going to get real picky about, well, no, it was more in that state than you wanted, but I expect the relative positionings of the plays to be correct and the primary states in which they're involved to be correct. Okay, that's it for the history of oil and gas per se. After Dr. Meadows finishes his last lecture, I'll make a video for the geology review.